And hi, everybody. Great to have you with us for the final edition of Yankees Hot Stove this offseason. Bob Lorenz and Jack Curry with you, along with John Heyman of Sports Illustrated and MLB Network. So let's set the table for the Yankees now. Reporting to spring training in a couple weeks, if you can believe that. And we're going to take a look at what we believe is the projected lineup for the 2011 season. And, Jack, it all begins with the captain at the top in the quest in a season for 3,000 hits.
Right, the 3,000 hit chase begins, Bob. And Joe Girardi has said Jeter will hit leadoff for the Yankees, and that's not a surprising move at all because last year when Jeter was going through the worst season of his career, Girardi continued to show faith in him, kept him up at the top of the lineup. Girardi's going to do that again. The Yankees expect a rejuvenated Derek Jeter. You could make an argument that Gardner, who saw more pitches per plate appearance than any other player in Major League Baseball, is a leadoff hitter type, but they'll keep him down at the number 9 and spin that lineup over.
And listen, we know things can always change. In fact, we had Curtis Granderson penciled in at the number 2 spot, but Nick Swisher, John, was very successful last year as well. Do you like Granderson in the 2, Swisher, or maybe a mix?
You know what? I actually like Swisher in that number 2 hole. The guy sees a lot of pitches, walks a lot. He's got some power. I like him batting second in front of the Teixeira and A-Rod. And I like Granderson. I think Granderson has really good power, but doesn't see as many pitches, not as consistent against lefties as Swisher is for obvious reasons, being that he's a switch hitter. I just leave Swisher in that number 2 hole.
And you mentioned Gardner at 9, and you think about maybe some guys in a holding pattern, him in the 9 because he had the surgery. Mark Teixeira's coming off surgery. So there are certain guys in that lineup you got to have a little wait-and-see attitude in spring.
Right, you absolutely do. But I know Gardner has talked about feeling fine. Teixeira has too. But when we look at that lineup, I mean, I think the Yankees should be very excited as they go forward. You look at a guy like Cano, and Cano is hitting 5th in this lineup. There won't be any questions at all about whether or not Cano can handle that. He's a guy who could move up in the lineup. He has told us that he thinks he could be a number 3 hitter someday. And I agree with John, Bob. I think that I'd rather see Swisher in the number 2 hole.
And your special on Robinson Cano coming up immediately after this program. Now, back to Derek Jeter at the top. And Brian Cashman made the comment this week. He was asked a hypothetical about Derek Jeter at shortstop, said at some point he might envision him in center field. Is that worth a discussion here? Because he made it very clear Jeter's not moving anytime soon.
You know, maybe just the fact that he said it, it's interesting that he said it out loud. I think we all kind of knew that Jeter's not going to be a shortstop for 4 years. It's a little bit interesting that he said outfield rather than third base. I think most of us kind of assumed that he'd slide over to third base eventually. I still think Jeter can play shortstop. I still think he has at least 2 good years in him at shortstop. But that will be a question in this contract because there aren't too many shortstops at age 40 or 39, anything like that. So I think eventually we're going to have to address it. Not right now, though.
It was Derek Jeter. It's an offseason where there's been a lot of attention about his contract. The Yankees and Jeter finally were able to get that sorted out. And I think because it's Jeter, it becomes more of an issue. But Brian Cashman said it. He answered a hypothetical question, but then he pretty much said this isn't an issue right now. It's something that down the line the Yankees might have to deal with.
All right, guys, let's check with the projected bench down, some backup guys. And I'm going to tee it up with an email here. This is an email coming from Tom Hamill in New Jersey. I think the Yankees have said Russell Martin is their starting catcher, but is there any way that Jesus Montero can win that job in camp? And, you know, Jack, right now, we've talked about this. It looks like he's at least ticketed right now for AAA.
Right. They signed Russ Martin for a reason. They believe Russ Martin is the guy who's going to be behind there. If Montero has a tremendous spring, could that make the Yankees change their mind? Anything is possible. But I think right now, if the Yankees are still projecting him as a catcher, they'd like to see him get more seasoning at AAA. They have no doubt this guy is going to hit at the Major League level. They still want to see about him as a catcher and how he can be defensively at the Major League level.
All right, so let's take a look at the projected bench right now as we see it. And listen, there are guys that are going to have to earn jobs. Ramiro Pena, Eduardo Nunez. Andrew Jones is going to be there, John. We know that. He's on board to be that backup outfielder, can play a little outfield, has some power. What do you think about that projected bench right now?
Not bad. I think Andrew Jones was the perfect fit there, being a right-handed hitter who's good defensively at all 3 positions. Makes sense. They have 2 lefty bats as the starters. Jones, I think, will see a lot of playing time. The question there for me is there some duplication with Pena and Nunez? There's similar type players. I think Nunez is a better player all around, better hitter, and I think he may make the team. Pena may be dealt. I'm not sure. He may be sent down. I'm really not sure what's going to happen to him, but it seems to me a little bit of a duplication with those 2 players on the same roster.
They did work Pena, though, into the outfield a little bit, tried to make him a super utility. Will that help him?
You know what? I agree with John. I think that when you look at Nunez and Pena, they do some of the same things, and I think Nunez is the better hitter, and he's more athletic. I look at a guy like Brandon Laird, a guy who played third base and put up some great numbers at the minor league level for the Yankees Rays last year. They tried to work him into the outfield. They're trying to add to his versatility. He loved that idea. He said, anything that can get me to the major leagues quicker, I'm all for it. Because when you look at that bench, Cervelli doesn't have power. Nunez doesn't have power. Pena doesn't have power. Jones will give you some power, but I think a guy like Laird, Joe Girardi wouldn't mind having one more guy coming off the bench who could show some pop.
All right, guys, now let's get to the projected rotation. And by the way, this has got no media play this offseason. Tongue-in-cheek. Sabathia, Burnett, Phil Hughes, no Cliff Lee, obviously, and we'll talk about that in a little bit as we talk about winners and losers in the offseason. But right now, it's Nova and it's Mitre. They did sign Bartolo Colon this week, but that was one of those, low-risk, high-reward possibilities, John.
Yeah, I think they're taking a flyer on Colon. You can't blame them because it is a low risk. It's very little money. I think he had a good winter ball in Dominican, but I just don't see him making this rotation. I think that's really a flyer. I do think that Andy Pettit's probably coming back. That will enhance it significantly. If he doesn't, there's still Millwood and Garcia on the board, and I cannot see Nova and Mitre both in that rotation. We'll see. For now, it's that way, but I think they're in a holding pattern, waiting on Pettit. If not Pettit, they'll get one of those other two guys, Millwood or Garcia.
And from the last time we met, a little more buzz the past week about Pettit.
Right. If that graphic that we just showed, Bob, if you had Andy Pettit's head in there, I think it would look a lot different to Yankee fans. And John is right. There is still seeming that the Yankees have optimism that Pettit may come back. I asked Brian Cashman about it yesterday. I think I've asked him about it 25 times this offseason. And this time, I will say, he answered "we're waiting" with a little more optimism in his voice. So I think the Yankees would just love to have the answer knowing that Pettit is back in the fold.
I think one wild card in this is A.J. Burnett. How does he work with the new pitching coach, Larry Rothschild? Also, Phil Hughes. Can he have another 18 win? Can he up that? He had a few ups and downs, but still, Jack, 118 last season.
118, had great run support. When you look at what the Yankees did for him offensively, that helped him get to those 18 wins. But I think that there's a lot of room for improvement with Phil Hughes, and I think he would say the same thing. Bob, I love the way this guy came out to start last season. You saw him on the mound with a swagger that you had never seen before, and then I think he lost that a little bit, and I think that's where some of the slumping came in. If I'm the Yankees, I want to see Phil Hughes be that guy that he was to start the 2010 season, basically walking out there on the mound and saying, I have the stuff that I'm going to get you out, and I just believe that I'm going to do it. Wasn't able to put guys away often enough. That was a problem. All
right, guys, let's wrap up our talk about the 2011 Yankees by taking a look at the projected bullpen. And we know that they signed some guys, re-signed Mariano Rivera, brought in Rafael Soriano. John, do you think this is one of those situations where now you're an advocate of Kerry Wood and what he did second half of last season, that lockdown 8th inning, that it's a 7-inning game with those two guys out there?
Yeah, I think they have a terrific bullpen. I think this is really one of the major strengths of this team thanks to that Soriano signing. With Rivera, I think you have the best closer in baseball. I mean, I don't just think that. He is the best closer in baseball. Soriano, you should have the best setup man. Feliciano, you have a terrific left-hander to get guys out. And I think Robertson and Jabba in those roles of 7th inning, 6th inning, they're going to be very good as well. So Boston's got a good bullpen, but I think Cashman is right. The Yankee bullpen is better and probably the best in baseball.